Now, we will dive into the fascinating complexity of our living world. To understand how life works, biologists break it down into levels of organization. Think of it like a ladder. We start small with macromolecules and cells, move up the ladder to tissues and organs, and eventually reach the level of individual organisms. When we group individuals together, we get populations, then communities, ecosystems, and finally massive biomes. When you look at nature with a scientific lens, you will find yourself asking two distinct types of questions about everything you see. Let's use a singing bird as an example. The first type of question is the how question. The how question tells about mechanism. How does the bird sing? This looks for the physical mechanics. The answer involves the bird's voice box and the vibration of bones to create sound. Second type is the why question. The why question tells about significance. Why does the bird sing? This looks for the purpose. The answer might be that the bird is trying to communicate with a mate during breeding season. Think about other mysteries in nature. Why are flowers that bloom at night usually white? Because to be visible to pollinators in the dark. How does a bee know which flower has nectar? Because it produces scent and visual cues. Now, what is ecology? Now, where does ecology fit into all of this? Ecology is the study of how organisms interact with each other and with their physical environment, containing the abiotic factors like sunlight, water, and soil. While biology covers everything from molecules to biomes, ecology focuses primarily on these four higher levels. One is organisms, two is populations. Populations are group of the same species. Three is communities. They're different species living together. Four is biomes. Biome is a large regional systems like deserts or rainforests. Here, we are going to zoom in specifically on the population level. We will explore how groups of the same species interact, grow, and survive in their environment. Understanding populations is the key to understanding how life sustains itself over generations. Let's begin by looking at what defines a population and how we measure its success. What is a population? In nature, we rarely find a single lonely individual living thing in total isolation. Most organisms live in groups within a specific geographic area. They share resources, compete for food, and most importantly, they breed with one another. In ecology, we call this group a population. While interbreeding usually implies sexual reproduction, for ecological purposes, we also count groups resulting from asexual reproduction, like a colony of bacteria, as a population. Whether it's all the lotus plants in a pond, or the rats in an abandoned house, or the teakwood trees in a forest, these groups are the real units of evolution. While an individual organism has to cope with the environment, it is the population that evolves over time through natural selection. Now, let us talk about population attributes. An individual as a life, but a population as statistics. To understand the health of a species, we look at attributes that only exist at the group level or population level. Let's take an birth and death rates. An individual is born and eventually dies. However, a population has a rate. We calculate this per capita rate, that is per member. What is the deaths per member of the population? What is the birth per member of the population? Example, if a pond has 20 lotus plants and 8 new ones grow, the birth rate is 8 divided by 20, that is 0.04 offspring per lotus plant per year. The other example is if 4 fruit flies out of a group of 40 die in a week, the death rate is 4 divided by 40 is equal to zero point 0.1, that is zero point 0.1 deaths per fly per week. Next, sex ratio. An individual is either male or female. A population, however, has a ratio. For example, 60% of the population are female, 40% of the population are male. That leads us to the age pyramid. At any given moment, a population is made up of people of different ages. When we plot the percentage of individuals in each age group, we get an age pyramid. The shape of this pyramid tells us the future of that population. 1. Growing population have a broad base, that is, it has a lot of young individuals. 2. Stable population have a even distribution across age groups. 3. Declining population have a narrow base, that is, fewer young individuals than the old ones. The size of the population tells us how well a species is doing in its habitat. We call this as a population density, which is represented by capital N. While counting every single head seems like the best method, but it is not always the most accurate or practical. Let us see two scenarios. One scenario where numbers misleads us. Imagine a field with 200 tiny weeds and one massive banyan tree. By just counting pure numbers, the weeds seems more important because they are 200. However, the banyan tree has a much larger impact on the ecosystem. In this case, measuring biomass or percentage cover is a better reflection of reality than just counting the numbers. The other scenario where numbers are impossible or calculating the numbers is impossible. Example, you cannot count every bacterium in a petri dish. Instead, we use representative sample or we calculate colonies. Now, a population size can be estimated indirectly. Sometimes we do not need the absolute number. A relative density works just fine. For example, a fisherman might measure the number of fish caught per trap to estimate the lake's population. In some cases, we estimate population size without ever seeing the animals at all. For the Indian tiger census, officials do not count every tiger by seeing it. They use indirect evidence like pug marks or fecal pellets to determine how many tigers are roaming the reserve. Next, we will discuss about population growth. Imagine a population, whether it's humans in a city or fish in a pond. This number is never truly set in stone. It is constantly shifting based on food availability, predators, and even the weather. What I mean is, population is never with a fixed number of people, it is ever changing. To understand how a population changes, we look at four basic levers that move the needle. One is natality, that is births. Whenever a birth occurs, it adds individuals to the population. Two is immigration. If newcomers arrive from elsewhere, it also adds individuals to the population. Three is mortality, that is deaths. Obviously, it removes numbers from the population. Emigration, that is when some numbers leave that group, then that removes the individuals. Now, there are two models of population growth. Model 1 is exponential growth. When resources like food and space are unlimited, that is, every species has the innate power to grow at a staggering rate or maximum rate. Darwin noted that even slow breeding animals like elephants could overrun the earth if nothing stopped them, and they show exponential growth. We use the letter small r to represent the intrinsic rate of natural increase. This is essentially the birth rate minus the death rate. In this model, the more individuals you have, the faster the population grows. This results in a J-shaped curve on a graph. Now let us see about the model 2, which is logistic growth. In the real world, resources are finite. No habitat has an endless supply of food or space. This leads to competition where only the fittest survive. Every environment has a ceiling, that is, a maximum number of individuals it can support. We call this as the carrying capacity of that habitat or that environment. Because resources are limited, growth doesn't just shoot up forever. It follows a specific path. First is lag phase, where slow growth at the beginning occurs. Next is acceleration phase, where growth starts to pick up. Next is deceleration phase, where growth slows down as the population nears the ceiling. Next is asymptote, where the population levels off at the carrying capacity. This creates a sigmoid curve, which was described by the Verhulst Pearl. While exponential growth is a fascinating mathematical concept, logistic growth is the reality of the nature. Whether it is a tiny paramecium in a lab flask or the human population in India, growth eventually hits a limit imposed by the surrounding environment. Now let us see about life history of variation. In the world of biology, every population has one ultimate goal, that is Darwinian fitness. This is essentially a measure of reproductive success, often represented by the high intrinsic rate of increase. Simply put, organisms evolve to become as efficient as possible at passing on their genes within their specific environment. There is not just a one right way to reproduce. Depending on the environment, different species have evolved different life history strategies. We can look at these through two main ways. One is frequency, that is, how often do they breed? There are one time breeders, like some species, all their energy into a single massive reproductive event before they die. Examples: Pacific salmon and bamboo. There are repeat breeders, where the species breed multiple times throughout their lives. Examples: most birds and mammals. Next is quantity versus quality. The mass production strategy. Here, producing a huge number of tiny offsprings. This ensures that even if most don't survive, a few certainly will. Examples oysters and pelagic fish. The other strategy is like high investment strategy, producing a very small number of large offsprings. Here, the parents invest more energy into each individual to ensure a higher chance of survival. Examples humans, elephants, and most birds. You might wonder which approach is the most desirable for maximizing fitness. Ecologists tell us there is no universal winner. Instead, fitness is contextual. A strategy that works in a stable forest might fail miserably in a chaotic coral reef. The life history traits we see today are the result of millions of years of evolution reacting to two main things. One is abiotic factors and other is biotic factors. Abiotic factors include non-living constraints like climate, water availability, and temperature. Biotic factors are living constraints like competition for food, predators, and disease. In short, every organism is a living solution to an environmental puzzle. Understanding how these traits evolve remains one of the most important and active areas of research in modern ecology. Now, let us move to the population interactions. Imagine a lush forest or a deep blue ocean. Now, try to imagine a natural habitat on Earth inhabited by just one single species. Can you do it? The truth is, you cannot, because such a place doesn't exist. In nature, a single species habitat is actually inconceivable. Even the most self sufficient organisms like plants can't be alone. A plant might make its own food via photosynthesis, but it still relies on soil microbes to break down organic matter so it can eat nutrients. And without animal agents like bees or birds, that plant would never be able to pollinate and reproduce. In short, animals, plants, and microbes form a biological community where everyone is connected. We call these connections population interactions. When two different species interact, scientists use a simple shorthand to track who wins and who loses. We use a plus sign for a benefit, minus sign for a harm, and zero for a neutral effect. Let's break down the six primary ways species interact with one another. One is mutualism, where there is a win win situation. This is like a buddy system of nature. In mutualism, both species benefit. Example, think of a bee and a flower. The bee gets a nectar, which is a food, and the flower gets its pollen moved to another plant, helping in reproduction. Second interaction is competition. There is a lose lose. You might think someone wins a competition, but in biological terms, both species usually lose energy or resources in the struggle. Even the winner had to fight for it, which takes a toll on their population. Third is predation and parasitism. Here, one will be the winner and the other will be loser. In both of these scenarios, one species benefits while the other is harmed. Let us take a predation. The predator eats the prey. It is quick and lethal. In the other hand, parasitism. The parasite, like a tick or a tapeworm, lives on or inside a host. It does not usually kill the host immediately, but it drains their resources over time. Next interaction is commensalism. This is an interaction where one species gets a boost while the other literally doesn't affect it. Example, an orchid growing on a high branch of a tree. The orchid gets better sunlight. but the tree is not helped or hindered by the orchid's presence. That is, the tree is neutral. Next interaction is amensalism. This is the opposite of commensalism. Here, one species is harmed while the other is unaffected. Example, a large tree shading out a small seedling on the forest floor. The large tree doesn't gain anything by blocking the light, but the seedlings suffers. Notice one common thread. Predation, parasitism, and commensalism all require the two species to live in very close physical proximity. Nature is not just a collection of individuals, it is a complex web of give and take, whether they are helping, harming, or just ignoring each other. Now let us study little in detail about these interactions. Let us start with predation. When you hear the word predator, you probably picture a tiger chasing a deer. But in the world of ecology, the definition is much broader. Did you know a sparrow eating a seed is also a predator? Even a cow grazing in a field acts as a predator to the grass. In simple terms, predation is nature's delivery system. It is the primary way that energy which plants capture from the sun is transferred up to the higher levels of the food chain. Without predators, energy would remain trapped in the plants and the ecosystem would stall. Predators do much more than just eat. They act as the managers of an ecosystem. They serve three critical roles. One, conduits of energy. That is, they move energy across trophic levels. Two, population control. Without predators, prey populations would explode, leading to overcrowding and eventual collapse of the environment. Three is maintaining diversity. This sounds counterintuitive. How does killing something help diversity? By eating dominant prey species, predators prevent one single species from outcompeting and wiping out everyone else. Let us see about the starfish. In the American Pacific coast, when the starfish disaster was removed from a habitat, 10 different species of the invertebrates went extinct within a year. Why? Because without the starfish to keep them in check, the most aggressive species took over everything. We see the importance of predators most clearly when they are missing. When a species is moved to a new land where it has no natural enemies, it becomes invasive. Take the prickly pear cactus. In 1920s, it was introduced to Australia and it spread like wildfire over millions of hectares. The solution was scientists had to bring in a specific moth from the cactus' home country. Only when its natural predator arrived, the cactus was brought back into the balance. This is the foundation of biological control used in modern farming today. We will discuss it later. Nature has built-in safety switch. If a predator were too good at its job and ate every single prey animal, it would eventually starve to death itself. Because of this, predators are prudent. That is, they have evolved to coexist with their prey. Meanwhile, prey species have not stayed defenseless. They have developed amazing survival tactics. Example, camouflage. Some insects and frogs blend into their surroundings to stay invisible. The other method is by chemical warfare. Take an example of monarch butterfly. It tastes terrible to birds because it eats poisonous weeds as a caterpillar, storing those toxins in its body for life. Finally, let's look at plants. Plants have a unique problem. They cannot run away. Because of this, they have evolved some of the most sophisticated defense on the earth. One is like physical armor. Think of the thorns on a acacia or a cactus. Second is by chemical weapons. Many plants produce toxins to make herbivores sick or even kill them. Let us take an example of calotropis. This common weed produces cardiac glycosides, a poison that affects the heart. This is why you will never see a goat or cow eating it. Many chemicals we love, like caffeine, nicotine, and quinine, were not made for us. Plants created them specifically as defense drugs to stop animals from eating them. In summary, predation is not just about the kill, it is a sophisticated dance of energy transfer, population management, and evolutionary ingenuity. From the smallest sparrow to the tallest cactus, every organism is part of this constant struggle to eat, avoid being eaten, and keep the ecosystem in a delicate functional balance. Now, let us talk about another interaction, competition. When Charles Darwin spoke about the survival of the fittest, he viewed competition between species as one of the most powerful forces driving evolution. Most people assume competition only happens between close relatives, like two types of lions fighting over a zebra. But nature is much more complex than that. In reality, competition happens in two surprising ways. One is between unrelated rivals. Completely different animals can compete for the same food. For example, in South American lakes, visiting flamingos and resident fishes both eat the same tiny zooplankton. Second is by abundance does not stop conflict. Means you don't need a shortage of food for competition to occur. In interference competition, just presence of one species can distract or intimidate another, making them less efficient at eating even if there is a plenty of food to go around. Ecologists define competition as any process where the fitness of one species decreases because another species is present. To understand this, we look at Gauss' competitive exclusion principle. It states that two species competing for the exact same resources cannot live together. Eventually, the superior one will wipe out the other. We see this in two dramatic ways. One is by competitive exclusion. When goats were introduced to the Galapagos Islands, they were so much faster at eating grass that the native Abingdon tortoises could not keep up. Within just 10 years, the tortoises became extinct. Second is by competitive release. Sometimes a species is trapped in a small area, not because it likes it there, but because a bully is keeping it out. When scientists experimentally remove the bully species, the smaller species suddenly releases and expands its territory across the map. One of the most famous examples of this struggle happens on the rocky coasts of Scotland. A large barnacle called Balanus dominates the prime area of the shoreline. It physically crowds out a smaller barnacle, that is Chathamalus. This field experiment by researcher Joseph Connell proved that the smaller barnacles were perfectly capable of spreading in the area, but they were simply being excluded by a superior competitor. Interestingly, studies show that plants and herbivores are much more stressed by this kind of competition than carnivores are. While Gause's theory of one species must die works in a lab, nature often finds a more peaceful agreement. Modern biology focuses on how species evolve to stay out of each other's way. This is called resource partitioning. Instead of fighting to the death, species divide the resources. They might eat at different times of the day or hunt in different parts of the same tree. To prove this, scientist Robert MacArthur studied 5 species of warbler birds living in the same tree. They all ate similar insects, but they did not go extinct. Why? Because each species developed different foraging patterns. Some stayed at the top of the tree, while others stayed at the bottom. By splitting the neighborhood, they avoided competition and survived together. So, competition is not just about who is stronger, it is about how life adapts to share a limited world, whether it is through the tragic extinction of a tortoise or the clever time sharing of a warbler bird. Next, we will talk about the interaction called parasitism. In the world of biology, parasitism is a lifestyle that offers the ultimate prize, that is, free lodging and free meals. Because it is such an efficient way to survive, it has evolved in almost every group of living things, from tiny plants to large mammals. But don't be fooled, it is not easy. It is a evolutionary arms race. Many parasites are host specific, meaning they only attack one type of species. As the host evolves better ways to reject the parasite must evolve new ways to bypass those defenses. It is a constant battle of move and counter move. To be a successful uninvited guest, parasites have evolved very specific physical traits. Since they live because of someone else, they don't need the same tools which the host already have. They often lose unnecessary sense organs or digestive system because the host does the work for them. They develop suckers or hooks to cling tightly to the host. Their main goal is to spread, so they have an incredibly high reproductive capacity. Their life cycles are often like a complex roadmap involving intermediate hosts. For example, the human liver flu needs a snail and a fish before it can ever reach to the human. The malarial parasite needs a mosquito to travel from person to person. You might wonder, if a parasite needs its host to survive, why does it cause harm? The answer lies in natural selection. Parasites are not trying to be cruel, they are competing for resources. They drain the host's energy, reducing its growth, survival, and ability to reproduce. Sometimes they even make the host physically weak, so it is more likely to be eaten by a predator, which is often exactly where the parasite needs to go next to complete its life cycle. We can divide parasites into two main groups based on where they live. One is ectoparasites. These live on the external surface. Think of lice on humans, ticks on dogs, or tiny crustaceans on marine fish. Let us talk about parasitic plant Cuscata. Cuscata is a leafless yellow vine you see on edges. It lost its leaves and chlorophyll because it steals all its food from the host plant. Next, we will see about mosquito myth. Interestingly, a female mosquito is not considered a parasite. Even though she takes blood, She only uses it as a protein boost to produce eggs. She doesn't live on or in us for her own day to day survival. Next type of parasites are endoparasites. They are insiders. These live deep inside the body, like in the liver, lungs, or red blood cells. Because their environment is so specialized, their bodies are incredibly simple, but their reproductive systems are massive. One of the most fascinating examples of cheating in nature is brood parasitism. It is common in birds like cuckoo and the crow. The cuckoo does not build a nest, instead, it lays its eggs in a crow's nest. To pull this off, the cuckoo's eggs have evolved to mimic the crow's eggs in size and color. This tricks the crow into incubating and feeding the imposter chick as its own. If you watch crows and cuckoos in the spring, you can actually see this biological haste happening in the real time. Parasitism is a testament to the creativity of evolution. It is a world of specialized hooks, complex journeys through multiple laws, and clever disguises. While it may seem unfair to the host, it is highly successful strategy that ensures life finds a way to persist even at the expense of others. Now we will see about next interaction, commensalism. In our previous sessions, we looked at interactions where someone always loses, like predation or parasitism. Here we are looking at commensalism. This is a unique biological relationship where one species gets a clear benefit while the other species is essentially unaffected. They are not helped, but they are not harmed either. The most common form of commensalism involves one species using another for a lift or a place to stay. One example is the orchid and the mango. In tropical areas, you will often see orchids growing as epiphytes on the branches of mango trees. Epiphytes are plants that grow on the other plants. The orchid gets a higher sunny spot to grow, but it does not steal nutrients from the mango tree. The tree provides the space, but it does not even notice the orchid is there. The second example is whales and barnacles. Similarly, barnacles often attach themselves to the skin of the whales. The barnacles get a free ride through nutrient rich waters and protection from predators. To the massive whale, these tiny barnacles are like a few specks of dust. They cause no pain or benefit. If you've ever been to a farm or a rural area, you have likely seen white birds called cattle egrets hanging around cows. This is a classic example of commensalism in action. Here is how the logic works. As the cattle graze, they move through the tall grass. Their heavy footsteps stir up and flush out hidden insects. The egrets following right behind easily catch these flying insects that would otherwise be invisible. The cattle do all the work of finding the food while the egret gets an easy meal. Since the cow does not eat the insects and is not bothered by the bird, the cow remains neutral while the bird benefits. Our final example takes us underwater to the relationship between the sea anemone and the clownfish. The sea anemone is covered in stinging tentacles that can paralyze most fish. However, the clownfish has evolved a special coating that makes it immune to these stings. By living among the tentacles, clownfish gets a fortress where predators are too scared to enter. And as far as scientists can tell, the anemone does not get anything back from the fish. It does not get food from it, and it does not get cleaned by it. It is simply providing a home without even trying. Commensalism reminds us that nature is not always a dog eat dog world. Sometimes organisms just exist alongside one another, with one species cleverly taking advantage of the habits or the size of another without causing any trouble. It is the ultimate roommate situation where one person pays the rent and other just enjoys the air conditioning. Now, let us see about the next interaction, mutualism. The most harmonious interaction is mutualism. This is a relationship where both species benefit. It is not just a friendly coincidence. Often, these species are so dependent on each other that they cannot survive alone. Some of the most important mutualistic relationships are happening right under our feet or on the surface of rocks. Heard of lichens? A lichen is not one organism. It is a partnership between a fungus and a photosynthesizing algae. The algae produces food through photosynthesis, and in turn, the fungus provides a protected home and absorbs water and minerals. The other is mycorrhiza. This is a bond between fungi and roots of the higher plants. The fungi are experts at pulling nutrients from the soil, which they give to the plant. In exchange, the plant shares the energy rich sugars it makes in its leaves. When it comes to plants and animals, mutualism becomes a business transaction. Plants need animals to move their pollen and seeds, but animals don't work for free, they require fees. In terms of rewards, plants offer nectar, pollen, or juicy fruits. Here there is one problem. Some animals are cheaters. They try to steal the nectar without picking up any pollen. To prevent cheating, many plants and animals have co evolved. Their shapes and behaviors have changed over millions of years to fit each other perfectly like a lock and key. The relationship between the fig tree and fig wasp is one of the nature's tightest bonds. A specific species of fig can only be pollinated by its specific partner wasp. The deal is the female wasp enters the fig to lay her eggs. While she is in there, she pollinates the flowers. The fig tree allows the wasp larva to eat some of its developing seeds as food. It is a perfectly balanced trade. Not all mutualism is based on an honest trade. Some plants use sexual deceit. The Mediterranean orchid of Rhys has evolved a petal that looks exactly like a female bee, matching her color, size, and markings perfectly. A male bee, thinking he has found a mate, attempts to mate with the flower, a process called pseudocopulation. During this encounter, the bee gets dusted with pollen. When he gets fooled by the second flower, he transfers that pollen. This is a high stake game. If the female bee evolves to look even slightly different, the orchid must also change its costume immediately. If it does not, the male bees won't be fooled anymore and the orchid will go extinct. Co-evolution should occur to continue the process.